Imagine you're driving home late at night. The roads are empty, your music is low, and you're maybe 10 minutes from your own driveway. Then you see it, flashing red and blue in your rearview mirror. Your heart does that little jump. You pull over. The officer walks up, flashlight in hand, and asks the first question. It's always the same question. And here's what almost nobody realizes. How you answer that single question can legally hand the police permission to tear your car apart, not because you did anything wrong, not because they have evidence, but because of one tiny mistake in your reply. Answer this wrong, and police can legally search your car. Has this ever happened to you? Be honest. Have you ever sat in the driver's seat, palms sweating, trying to be polite, just wanting the whole thing to be over? Of course you have. Most of us have. And that's exactly why you need to hear what I'm about to tell you. Because by the end of this video, you're going to understand a hidden rule of the road that could save you from a situation you never saw coming. Stick around. Let me take you back to a real stop that changed everything for one driver. His name isn't important. What matters is what happened on a quiet stretch of highway in rural Ohio. A state trooper pulled him over for what the officer called weaving within the lane. Not crossing the lines, just drifting a little. The driver handed over his license and registration. He was nervous, but polite. Then the trooper asked the question, "Do you have anything illegal in the vehicle?" The driver said no, because he didn't. Then the trooper asked another question, "Do you mind if I take a quick look around inside?" And here's where the driver made the mistake that millions of people make every single day. He said, "Sure, go ahead. I've got nothing to hide." 15 minutes later, that driver was handcuffed on the side of the road. Not because the officer found drugs or weapons, but because of what happened after consent was given. The officer moved a backpack, found a loose pill that turned out to be a prescription medication not in its original bottle, and suddenly a traffic stop became a criminal investigation. The driver was charged with a misdemeanor, the case was eventually dropped, but the car was searched, his privacy was gone, and none of it would have happened if he had answered that first question differently. Here's the truth that most people don't understand. The Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution protects you from unreasonable searches and seizures. In the UK, Article 8 of the Human Rights Act protects your right to private and family life. Those are powerful protections on paper. But here's where it gets strange. Those protections disappear the moment you say yes to a police officer's request. And the way officers are trained to ask that question is almost designed to make you say yes without thinking. Let me explain exactly how this works. Police generally need one of three things to search your car legally. Probable cause, meaning they have specific facts suggesting a crime has been committed. A warrant, which requires a judge's approval, or exigent circumstances, like if they believe evidence is about to be destroyed. But there's a fourth way, the most common way by far, your consent. And once you give consent, all those constitutional protections vanish instantly. Almost nobody talks about this part. But studies of traffic stop data show that in the United States alone, police ask for consent to search in millions of traffic stops every year, and the vast majority of people say yes. Why? Because they've been conditioned to be polite, because they're afraid that saying no will make them look guilty, because they genuinely believe they have nothing to hide. And here's the heartbreaking irony. The people with nothing to hide are often the ones who get burned the most, because when you have nothing to hide, you don't think twice about saying yes. But the officer doesn't know you have nothing to hide. And once they're inside your car, they're looking for anything, any tiny thing. An expired registration in the glove box, a smell they claim is marijuana, a loose item they can argue looks suspicious. This changes everything about how you should think about a traffic stop. Because the moment an officer asks, "Do you mind if I take a look?" they are not asking for permission. They are asking for your rights. And the most dangerous answer you can give is the one that feels most natural. But wait, let me pause here for a second. I know what some of you are thinking. Isn't saying no just going to make things worse? Won't the officer get suspicious and find another reason to search anyway? That's a fair question, and the answer might surprise you. In fact, it's the exact open loop we need to close before we go any further. Here's the reality. Saying no to a consent search cannot legally be used as probable cause. The Supreme Court has made that clear in cases like United States versus Beckwith. A police officer cannot search your car just because you refuse to let them. That would turn the Fourth Amendment inside out. So when you say, "I do not consent to a search," you are not being uncooperative. You are simply exercising a right. And officers know this. They are trained to ask for consent precisely because they know they don't have probable cause. If they had probable cause, they wouldn't need to ask. Think about that for a moment. But here's where it gets even more interesting. And this is the part that very few driving instructors, very few lawyers on social media, very few well-meaning friends will ever tell you. The real danger isn't in saying yes or no to a search. The real danger is in the very first question. The one that comes before the officer even asks to look inside. That question is usually something like, Do you know why I pulled you over? Or even simpler, where are you headed tonight? Answer this wrong, and police can legally search your car, not because you consented, but because your answer gave them something much more powerful than consent. It gave them probable cause. Let me walk you through a scenario. Imagine an officer pulls you over for a broken taillight. It's a minor equipment violation. That alone does not give them the right to search your car. But then they ask, have you been drinking tonight? You say no because you haven't. Then they ask, do you have any drugs or weapons in the car? Again, you say no, you're being honest. But now, watch what happens next. The officer says, you seem really nervous. Your hands are shaking. Is there something you want to tell me? And suddenly your nervousness, which is completely normal for anyone being pulled over, becomes something the officer can articulate as reasonable suspicion. And reasonable suspicion is a much lower legal standard than probable cause. From there, they might ask you to step out of the car, then they might say they smell something, and once they say that, the search is legally justified. Do you see how it works? The officer didn't need you to consent. They didn't need a warrant. They just needed you to answer questions in a way that allowed them to build a ladder from a broken taillight to probable cause. And that ladder starts with the very first words out of your mouth. This is why lawyers who specialize in traffic stop defense give a very specific piece of advice. You have the right to remain silent. That's not just something they say on television, it's a constitutional protection. In the United States, the Fifth Amendment protects you from self-incrimination. In the UK, the right to silence is protected under the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act 1994 with important nuances. But here's what most people don't understand. You don't have to announce that you're remaining silent. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to be confrontational. You simply don't have to answer questions beyond identifying yourself and providing your license, registration, and proof of insurance. That's it. Those are the only things you are legally required to do during a traffic stop in almost every jurisdiction in the US and UK. Everything else, where you're going, where you've been, whether you've been drinking, whether you have anything illegal, those are voluntary questions. And every word you say can and will be used to build that ladder. Let me give you a real example that's been used in police training materials across the country. An officer pulls over a car for speeding. The driver is calm, hands on the wheel, polite. The officer asks, "Is there any reason you're in such a hurry tonight?" The driver says, "I'm just trying to get home to my family." That's a perfectly human answer. It's kind, it's relatable. But in the officer's mind, that answer is now noted. The officer might write in their report, "Driver appeared eager to leave the area, stated he was rushing home to family, behavior consistent with attempting to avoid detection." See how that works? A normal, innocent answer gets twisted into justification. Now imagine the driver had simply said, "Officer, I'd prefer not to answer that question." That's not rude. That's not suspicious. That's a person exercising their rights. And no court in the country will allow that answer to be used as probable cause. This is the open loop I promised to close. The wrong answer isn't yes or no to a search. The wrong answer is any answer that gives the officer more information than they already have, because information is fuel. And once you give them fuel, they can keep the stop going as long as they want. And the longer the stop goes, the more opportunities they have to find something, even if that something is completely innocent. Here's a number that should scare you. The average traffic stop in the United States lasts between 15 and 30 minutes. But when a driver starts answering questions, chit-chatting, explaining where they're going, making small talk, that stop can easily stretch to 45 minutes or more. Why? Because the officer is gathering information. And every new piece of information gives them a new reason to keep asking questions. This is called the extended detention doctrine. The Supreme Court case Rodriguez versus United States made it clear that police cannot extend a traffic stop beyond the time reasonably needed to handle the traffic violation unless they have reasonable suspicion of other criminal activity. But guess how they get that reasonable suspicion? From your answers. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this. How many times have you been pulled over and just started talking? Explaining where you were coming from? Apologizing? Making nervous jokes? I've done it. Almost everyone has. And we do it because we're human. We want to be seen as cooperative. We want the encounter to end quickly. But the research is clear. The more you talk, the longer the stop lasts. And the longer the stop lasts, the greater the chance that something, anything, will be used to justify a search. But then something unexpected happens in about 5% of these stops. The driver says almost nothing. They hand over their documents. They answer the required questions with one-word answers. They don't consent to a search. And here's what officers report in those cases. They feel frustrated because they know there's nothing they can do. Without consent, without probable cause, without reasonable suspicion, the stop ends. The driver gets a warning or a ticket and drives away. Their car remains private. Their dignity remains intact. So why doesn't everyone do this? Fear. Fear that saying nothing will look guilty. Fear of an angry officer. fear of escalation. And let's be honest, that fear is not irrational. There are absolutely situations where an officer might react poorly to a driver exercising their rights. But here's the thing, that reaction cannot legally justify a search either. And any evidence found after an illegal search can be suppressed in court. That's the exclusionary rule. It's not perfect, but it exists precisely to protect people from overreaching. Now I need to address something important. Everything I'm telling you is for educational purposes. I am not giving you legal advice. Laws vary by state and by country. In the UK, for example, police have broader stop and search powers under Section 1 of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, but they still need reasonable suspicion unless they're in a designated area under Section 60. The principle remains the same, though. You are not required to help the police build a case against you. That's not obstruction. That's not disrespect. That's the law. Here's the part that will really make you think. The single most dangerous answer you can give during a traffic stop is not yes to a search. It's not even an admission of guilt. The single most dangerous answer is any answer that creates a contradiction, because once there's a contradiction, real or manufactured, the officer has all the probable cause they need. Let me explain. An officer asks, "Have you had anything to drink tonight?" You say no because you haven't. Then the officer says, "I smell alcohol." Now what? You know you haven't been drinking, but the officer is claiming to smell something. That smell is their word against yours, and in that moment they have probable cause to administer field sobriety tests. And once those tests begin, everything escalates. The same thing applies to drugs. You say there's nothing illegal in the car. The officer says they smell marijuana. Even if you've never smoked in your life, that smell, which could be from a nearby car, from a passenger, or from thin air, is now justification for a search. This is why the safest answer is often no answer at all. Politely but firmly stating, "I'm going to exercise my right to remain silent and my right to an attorney before answering any questions," shuts down this entire line of questioning. It doesn't give the officer anything to contradict. It doesn't create a ladder. It simply ends the interrogation. But here's where it gets really subtle. And this is the final piece of the puzzle. The absolute worst answer you can give is one that tries to be helpful. "No, officer, you won't find anything. I just came from my mom's house. She's a church-going woman. I've got groceries in the back. Feel free to look." Every single word of that answer is information the officer can use. Now they know you were at your mom's house. They can ask for her address. They can call her. They know you have groceries. Maybe they want to check the receipt to see if you bought anything that could be used to make drugs. They know you said, "Feel free to look," which is explicit consent. You just handed them everything. The better answer, "Officer, I don't consent to any searches. Am I free to go?" That's it. That's the entire script. It's short, it's polite, it's legally bulletproof. Let me leave you with one final story. A woman in Texas was pulled over for a license plate light that was out. She was a nurse coming home from a 12-hour shift. She was exhausted. The officer asked if she had anything illegal. She said no. He asked if he could search. She said yes, because she was tired and just wanted to go home. He found a single Adderall pill in her purse. It was her prescription, but it wasn't in the bottle. She was arrested. She spent a night in jail. She lost her job at the hospital because of the pending charge. The case was eventually dismissed, but the damage was done, all because she answered one question the wrong way. You are not required to be polite at the expense of your rights. You are not required to answer questions. You are not required to consent. And the next time those blue lights appear in your mirror, I want you to remember this video. Take a breath. Hand over your documents. And then, kindly and calmly, say nothing else. Because silence is not always golden. Sometimes it's the only thing standing between you and a situation you never saw coming. What would you do if an officer asked to search your car right now? Have you ever been in this situation? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to understand more about your rights before you need them, make sure you're subscribed. Because the law is not a mystery. It's a tool, and now you know how to use it.